Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Megan Dowling, and I am the Programs Coordinator for the Atlantic branch of the Kidney Foundation, and I am also a registered dietitian. I am very pleased to introduce you to our Kidney Community Kitchen volunteer, Chef Kris Gaudet. Kris has spent over 15 years in the food and beverage industry, working in small-scale restaurants to large volume hotels and convention centers all across the Atlantic provinces. He is currently the sous chef of the Halifax Convention Center, vice president of the Culinary Federation of Nova Scotia, a board member on the Nova Scotia Tourism Human Resource Council, and a food and beverage manager certified. At the age of 18, Kris was diagnosed with IgA nephropathy, and Kris has spent some time on dialysis and received a kidney transplant in 2014. He is currently on dialysis again in the greater Halifax area. With his knowledge of cooking and the renal world, he is excited to work with the Kidney Foundation to help people struggling with the nutrition aspect of the disease by producing recipes, tricks, and tips that are kidney friendly. June Martin is a registered renal dietitian working in the Grand River Hospital. June has been a member of the Kidney Foundation's National Programs and Public Policy and has been instrumental in launching and supporting the Kidney Community Kitchen. And now we will proceed to Chef Kris's cooking demo.
Hi everyone, my name is Kris Gaudet. I'm the chef for the Kidney Foundation of Canada. Today we're going to be making a warm falafel wrap, very healthy, can be used for lunch or supper, either or. Can be served with garden salad, fruit salad, double boiled French fries, anything like that. Really good, healthy, plant-based option. So, we are going to start with the chickpeas. So there's 400 grams of chickpeas that go in the food processor. Okay. We are also going to add a quarter of an onion. So these are chopped. They just go right in. The garlic cloves as well. They go in whole, peeled whole, just go right in there. Same with the parsley, okay? This is 10 grams of parsley. That goes in. The recipe will be available as well, so don't worry about the measurements and all that. We'll have the recipe for you. Then, the harissa paste, or you can use sriracha, chili flakes, anything to give it a kick. Totally optional, of course. If you don't like spice, by all means, you can leave that out. So that goes in. So the 1 teaspoon of coriander and the 1 teaspoon of cumin goes in there. Wonderful fragrant spices. That all goes in there. As well as flour, okay? This helps to bind everything together. It'll help it'll help the product not crumble so much. So add a couple teaspoons first. Then you're going to pulse it, okay, until it binds. You don't want it pureed smooth. You want it a bit chunky to have a bit of texture. The last ingredient that goes in it will be tahini. So tahini is a sesame seed paste, basically. Really nice flavor, really nice smell to it, really earthy, umami flavors. So that'll go in there. just some lemon juice, okay, half of a lemon. Squeeze that in there. So again, you're going to pulse it. And if it sticks to the side, that's fine. Just open that up. Put that down. Okay. Just like so. Pulse it again. Again, you just want to bind it. It's pretty good there now, nice and pureed. Take this mixture and you want to mix it, put it in a mixing bowl. Okay, so now that's ready to go. We are going to take the frying pan, put it on medium, should be okay. Okay, we're going to heat that up. Then we're going to take our olive oil and heat that up. Okay. So we'll heat this up. Then what we want to do is create some patties, okay? So we can stuff the tortilla or the pita. So what I've done with the pita is I've cut this in half, and then I've taken off a little strip from one of the sides. So when we take it, we want to put the small one in there, okay, stuff it, and then that gives you more of a durable shell to work with, and then you stuff it with, you know, your patties, all the garnishes that'll come with it. So that'll be ready to go. So again, you want to get this hot, take your hands, get in there, create some patties, okay? It doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to get them round, okay? Probably around that size, okay? Just a small little patty. Go right in there. I would do 4. 2 is plenty for one. Again, this recipe calls for 2 people. So you'll have plenty left over. All right. So that'll sear. I'm just going to go wash my hands and then we'll continue. Okay, so we are just going to flip these patties. Okay. Like so. I've turned the heat down to low. And we'll just get that cooked through. While that's cooking, we are going to chop some garlic and make a aioli for the dressing. So you're going to want to chop the garlic fairly fine. So this is basically mayonnaise with chopped up garlic and a little bit of skim milk to dilute it. So it can be drizzled right on top of the wrap. Okay, well, that's done. This will go in our bowl with the mayonnaise, then the skim milk is in there. Our garlic. That half of lemon that we had, we're going to zest it and then juice it in the aioli. So we'll just use a bit of zest. And then squeeze that juice right out. Our patties are almost done. I turned the stove off, or the burner off. So they're just sitting there, staying warm, the way we like it. And now it's time to serve. So take your pita, like I said, take the smaller one, and then just put it right in that pocket there, okay? So you double it up. You want to take your patty, put it in there, okay? Then you can do anything with it, okay? So here what we have are some sliced red onions, okay? Very finely chopped red onions. Some Boston lettuce. This is really nice. I love this. You can get this anywhere, okay? It's just a local grocery market. So then what you want to is just stuff this, okay? With this lettuce. Get some red onions in there, sliced red onions. Okay, and you can add sliced cucumbers, you can add really anything to it. Okay. Then drizzle of aioli that we made. So you just want to add that to that. And there we go. Warm falafel wrap, really healthy, vegan, without the aioli, of course, with a bit of milk in there. But again, very simple, very healthy, plant-based. You can do it. Anyone on dialysis or with anyone with kidney disease. I know what you're going through. I've had a transplant before, and I'm on dialysis right now, so I know the difficulty of cooking, especially. So I'm here to help, and hopefully we can do a lot more of these cooking shows, and maybe in class cooking as well.
Wonderful. So I hope everyone enjoyed that video. And very shortly, we'll be inviting Chef Kris and our dietitian June to take some of your questions. So we've received some questions, and Megan and I will just alternate asking our speakers just to share a little bit about what just the answers to some of the questions that we've been asked. So if we have Chef Kris and June with us, I'd like to address a question to June. So we received this question prior. I have low functioning kidneys and have now been referred to a specialist. I have none of the usual risk factors. So my question is, should I be on some type of kidney diet to slow down the disease? June, if you'd like to answer.
Okay, that's a great question. Without having any specific information, my recommendation for you would be the same for anybody who is at risk for kidney disease. So that would be limiting your salt intake, because that's just general healthy diet advice. We would recommend that you avoid processed foods. Not only do they contain salt, but they contain a variety of different kinds of phosphate additives, which we know are not good for the kidneys. And then just general healthy guidelines, modest amounts of animal proteins, and otherwise no specific diet recommendations unless you're instructed by your kidney health team. The general preventative guidelines are really general healthy guidelines for everyone.
Thank you for that, June. I do have another question for you. We have a question about potassium and how to control it, your intake of it when there's a lot of potassium in some foods. So I know we have a kidney community kitchen resource on potassium contents in foods, and we can put that in the chat box. But June, I'm wondering if you could comment on this a bit.
Okay. One of the toughest things when it comes to potassium is how it is in so many different things. And nowadays it's being added to a lot of foods as a preservative. So the most important thing I can tell you is to check your labels. So check the label on your deli meats, on any low sodium products. Those are incredibly high sources of potassium. The other thing to be cautious of is the number and servings of fruits and vegetables. You want to just keep those modest if you have a really high potassium diet. And I was really happy to see this wonderful recipe because, new research has shown us that foods like chickpeas and lentils that come from a can actually have quite a modest amount of protein. All that boiling and soaking and sitting in water in the can for so long actually takes a lot of the potassium out. And if you did have a really hard time controlling your potassium, you can take those canned chickpeas and simmer them for 10-15 minutes and you can remove even more potassium. So there's no magic number for potassium. For a lot of patients, it's trial and error. And even in the dialysis unit, I'll hear patients say, I can eat that. My potassium's fine. And another patient might have to be more cautious. So read your labels for sure. And then modest amounts of fruits and vegetables is generally a good starting point.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, well, I have a question next for both June and Kris regarding spices. So we had some questions in the chat about which spices are okay if you have chronic kidney disease. And so I was wondering, June, if you could weigh in on which spices are okay, or if there's anything to look at when choosing spices to flavor our foods. And then maybe after June has answered that question, maybe Kris, if you could weigh in on your favorite spice combinations to use maybe in lieu of salt.
Okay, so we pretty much love any sort of spice as long as there's no salt. So you can use garlic powder, just don't buy garlic salt. If you're buying a spice blend, make sure that salt's not in there. And then also if you're buying a spice blend, make sure there's no potassium chloride, because sometimes they sneak that in there to make it taste salty. But general rule of thumb, if there is no salt added, enjoy.
Perfect. Thank you. And Kris, I'm wondering if you could speak to a few of your favorite spices that you like to add to your foods to flavor them.
Yeah, so I would agree with June. Any spice is okay. The one big thing though, I use a lot of fresh garlic. That makes a big difference. Again, that garlic powder, if you have to use it, go ahead. But speaking as a chef, fresh is always better. So again, like every recipe is, I pretty much use garlic all the time.
I love garlic. June, I have another question for you. So we've been getting many questions in regards to plant-based proteins and whether or not they're safe for people with kidney disease to consume. So June, can you clarify some of the nutrition messages that we have around the consumption of plant-based proteins?
Absolutely. So we know that if you take a chickpea and you analyze it, it is quite high in phosphorus. And when I started out as a dietitian over 20 years ago, we told patients to avoid chickpeas. But we now know that the phosphorus in there is not absorbed by humans. It's bound to phytate, and we can't break that up. So it works out as a low phosphorus food. The canned ones are nice and low in potassium. And there's a lot of evidence that plant-based proteins are actually better for your kidneys. So there are studies that show improvement in all kinds of different parameters, blood levels that we look at as health professionals, and potentially that these plant-based proteins actually can slow down the progression of chronic kidney disease. And what's wonderful about them is they're amazing sources of fiber. This is an incredibly high fiber recipe. It's wonderful. They are super inexpensive and affordable, and like our fantastic pantry staple. So yes, I would say that chickpeas or legumes are safe for kidney patients. If you have a potassium restriction, just be cautious about making sure that you're buying the canned ones. And I will say, and Kris, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of falafel recipes don't use cooked chickpeas. They just soak the chickpeas and then grind them. That would not be a good idea for a kidney patient.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Excellent. That was a wonderful answer. Just to kind of piggyback on that, we had another question about chickpeas and whether or not they are soluble or insoluble fiber. The question asker specified that they have an ileostomy and have to be careful about insoluble fiber. So I was just wondering, June, if you could answer that.
Okay, so they are a source of both soluble and insoluble fiber. So you would need to be super careful if you were using those. So I would speak to your specialist about that. Sometimes with ostomies, if the chickpeas themselves are super finely ground, like in this recipe, it might be tolerable, but yeah, it certainly is a source of insoluble fiber. So do be cautious.
Thank you, June. Kris, I have a question for you. When you're feeling low energy, so maybe after a dialysis run, which foods do you prepare for yourself? And do you know of any kind of quick recipes at this time of day if your energy level is minimal?
Yeah, so I found that eggs were a really, really good food. You can have it boiled, scrambled, fried, a little bit of olive oil, anything really. So I think that's kind of a pick-me-up. I always have at least a dozen boiled per week, so I can have one like every day. It's really quick, and for me, it picks me up really well.
Awesome. That's a great idea, just to have something super quick on hand and just ready for you. That's great.
Yep.
We had another question regarding people are really excited about protein. I know in our earlier session, we had another dietitian yesterday, and she had a question in that one about whether or not kidney patients should be avoiding meat-sourced proteins because there's been so much emphasis on plant-based proteins lately. And if not, if people should be including animal proteins, is fish more kidney-friendly than other animal proteins?
Okay, so those are some good questions. We don't actually know if kidney patients should be avoiding animal protein. I think it's prudent to, for people who are not on dialysis, to choose modest amounts of animal protein. Sadly, there just really aren't a ton of great nutrition studies out there looking at that question, but we do know that animal protein increases blood flow to the kidneys, and that actually puts a bit of a strain on the kidneys. So as much as you can, plant-based proteins are a great idea. What was the end of that question? I'm sorry.
Oh, there was just a question about whether or not fish was superior to
Right. Sorry.
other meat-based proteins.
Not necessarily. I mean, fish has wonderful health benefits. It's full of heart-healthy fats, and it's a very lean protein typically. So in that way, it's fantastic. It's low in saturated fat, which we like. But there's no evidence to support me coming out and saying you should choose it more than chicken, for example. For heart health, maybe modest amounts of red meat, but yeah. No, nothing for certain on that.
June, we have, of course, another question about plant-based proteins. They're super popular right now, and we just learned some of the benefits of them. But what would you do if you're allergic to something like legumes, what other kind of plant proteins would you recommend trying?
Well, you could certainly try, you can get creative and try something like seitan, which is a wheat-based plant protein. So it's spelled Seitan. And you can do all kinds of different things with that. It's like a texturized vegetable protein. Not other plant-based proteins. I wish I'd prepared for this question. I'm sorry. That's the only one I can think of really easily. What about the other two dietitians on the call?
Well, I'm wondering, Kris, do you have any suggestions for different ways to prepare your plant-based proteins?
So
Or
you're
what are
putting
some
me
of your favorite ones to cook with? And
I'm
how
on
do you
the spot
prepare
now,
them?
right? I mean, a lot of ways too would be incorporated in pasta. I mean, you don't even have to really do anything to it, but I mean, like a baked pasta or anything like that, I throw in chickpeas or lentils or kind of something like that. Again, if you're in a rush and you don't have time to do patties and all that stuff, just adding it like that too would be okay.
For sure. And I know that a lot of people are really interested in kind of these new plant-based meat substitutes coming out onto the market. Everybody saw the Beyond Meat burger come out. It's on kind of your neighborhood corner A&W, which is exciting for the vegetarians amongst us. But I do just want to offer a little bit of a word of caution with those, is that they can be super high sodium, especially if they're prepared in a fast food or just a regular sit-down restaurant. The nutrition often won't be the same as what you might find on the store shelf. So even if you are okay with incorporating kind of Beyond Meat or any of the other meat substitutes off the grocery store shelf, just be aware that there might be additional sodium added to that if you order it from a restaurant. Just a bit of a word of warning there.
May I ask a question? June, what was the flour that you said you could use instead?
I think the seitan, or it's actually wheat gluten, and it is the protein portion of wheat.
S-T-A-Y?
Seitan.
Sorry.
That's okay.
We had another question from the chat. This one is not about plant-based proteins, which is a bit of a change up for us, but perhaps both June and Kris can weigh in on this. And it's just about how this individual who is asking is a support person who's creating recipes for their family member, and their family member struggles with how they don't find very much flavor in the food. Are there any recommendations you might have for boosting flavor? I think a lot of kidney patients, when they're first new to CKD eating and they've got to put down that salt shaker, really struggle with flavorful kind of food that will satisfy them. So if you could weigh in on that.
I can go first, June, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So when it comes to spices, I would say buy whole spices. Grind them yourself. That will release the flavors more. And then take a bit of oil, put it in a pan, and add your spices to the oil. Heat it up for 20, 30 seconds just to get those flavors going, to kind of open up the flavors. That should really help you when it comes to spices instead of adding them just raw like that. So yeah, that's the cooking part of the spices, I guess.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, adding some acid to your cooking, like the lemon juice in this recipe, and a lot of soup recipes that you'll find that are low in sodium have acids like lemon juice, lime juice, that sort of thing. They do a really good job at replacing that salt flavor that you might be missing, because they kind of stimulate your taste buds in a similar way that salt does. So in really great recipes that are low in salt that still taste really good, you'll often find some citrus or other acids, vinegars, that sort of thing, to boost the flavor.
Oh, for sure. I'll piggyback on that and just say there's quite a famous cookbook called Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, and it talks about the components to throw into a dish. And when you're cooking without salt, I say lean on the other three components. So adding a fat to a dish to get that really good mouthfeel and satiety. So that could be adding some olive oil in there, adding some acid, like June was just speaking about, a squeeze of lemon juice to finish off a pasta dish can be an awesome way to boost that flavor, or a little bit of heat. So adding chili flakes to something, or fresh jalapeno if you're creating a dish with avocado, can be a really nice way to boost the flavor without reaching for that salt shaker.
So one of the really popular trends that have been going on for a while now is coconut products. So flavoring with coconut milk, using coconut oil to cook. June, I'm just wondering if you can comment on whether this is safe for people with kidney disease and what we might have to look out for.
Unfortunately, coconut is a high potassium food item. So if you are trying to cut back on your potassium, you want to be really cautious with those coconut type products. So other options, a lot of curry recipes that call for coconut, you can use vanilla yogurt, which sounded weird to me, but actually works in place of the coconut, and coconut flavor, like as well, just to add to your food. So if you don't need a potassium restriction, enjoy, but if you do need a potassium restriction, then I don't recommend coconut products typically.
Can I have another question? See, I was a great milk drinker, so of course that's out with because of potassium. I've been using the oat synthetic milk. Is that a fairly safe one to use, or any of synthetics?
Yeah, so you can use it. Well, I mean, I can't give you any specific advice because I don't know like your other medical levels, but generally I would say that an oat milk or a rice milk or even some of the almond milks are quite safe to use, as long as you're choosing ones that aren't treated with phosphate additives. Phosphates are often used as an emulsifier. So you will find it in some cream products and like those non-dairy creamers that people buy for their coffee. So just check your label. I certainly have seen plenty out there that are not treated with those additives. And just to those who may have diabetes, the grain-based milks like the rice milk and the oat milk are a source of carbs, so you just have to keep track of that if you're doing carb counting.
I want to ask a question about chocolate. I like to eat chocolate every time, so I don't know if it is safe for my kidney. So I want to know. And the orange, it's my it's my problem. I don't know how to cook it. So I want to know how to eat it, how to manage it. Thank you.
So chocolate is a little bit high in potassium and phosphorus. I would generally suggest if one of my patients was craving chocolate, to have something like a chocolate chip cookie that had pieces of chocolate in it instead of a chocolate bar. And if you're thinking of an alternative to oranges, something like a clementine or a mandarin is a great option.
Awesome. That's a great answer. I just want to take
Thank
a
you.
remind everyone, we've had a couple of questions come through on mic. We really prefer that you enter the questions on chat just for clarity and so we can make sure everybody has a fair turn to ask a question. So if you could use chat, that would be preferred. Otherwise, I'll ask another question, and this can probably work for both June and Kris as well. We had a question coming over chat on picking low sodium items when eating out. So as a kidney patient, if you want to go out to a restaurant, or right now, what might be a little bit more realistic is order in to your home from a restaurant. Are there any tips that you would have for patients or strategies you use, Kris?
Well, the good thing about going in a restaurant, most of them, you can just say, you know, I have a low sodium diet. Can you not season my steak or my vegetables or anything like that? Can you not use butter? Use oil. So it depends on the restaurant, of course, but usually whatever you have on the menu, you can have salt-free.
Yeah, and for anybody who wants to choose like more of a chain restaurant, or, you know, sometimes when you're traveling for a medical appointment, you're stuck with trying to find something fast, really take advantage of those online nutrition facts sheets that you can find. In a nice restaurant that has everything made from scratch, you do have that ability, like Kris is saying. But if you're using a fast food restaurant or some sort of quick service restaurant, the servers certainly don't have the ability to reduce the sodium in it. So I would suggest looking online, seeing what you can find. And a good rule of thumb is that something like a hamburger is going to be safer than a chicken product because it's not going to have the phosphate additives.
That's great. It can be difficult when you're eating out to try to control all of those things for sure. Thank you. So we have another kind of trend that has been going on again for a while is apple cider vinegar, especially in the morning. So June, is it safe to have apple cider vinegar with water in the morning?
Yes, there's nothing, like, I mean, like any vinegar that comes from a fruit, it does have like a little bit of potassium, but there's nothing that would hurt you or any reason. I'm not sure this has any special benefits for you, but it certainly doesn't have any danger.
Wonderful. And another question for you. We've had a couple questions come in about soy products and whether or not they can be used for CKD patients. So that would include soy milk, tofu, and edamame were specified.
Okay, so soy milk is actually very similar in nutritional profile to cow's milk, so you can use it, but you need to replace the cow's milk with it. As far as tofu goes, it's typically fine, and it's a good source of plant-based protein. It's inexpensive, so yeah, but that would be totally acceptable. And then edamame typically is steamed. So if you buy like the bag of frozen, already shelled edamame, you can boil them and help remove some of the potassium. But if you're steaming them, all the potassium stays in there. So you should be cautious about that.
And just a note on that, I think that was a great answer. When you order edamame in the restaurant, usually it's heavily salted when it arrives at the table. It's usually, you would find that in sushi restaurants or Japanese restaurants as an appetizer. And you would definitely have to specify if you'd like to order that. A, it will come steamed, so it'll be higher there. And then B, it'll come covered in sea salt. So you just want to make that known.
Right. And if you have it at home, you have to take the edamame out of the shells to boil them first, or else they're not going to, no potassium is going to come out of there.
Thank you. So we only have a couple more minutes left until our next session. So I think I'll ask one more question. we've had quite a few questions and comments actually about different snack foods. So I'm wondering, this could be a question for June and Kris, what are some of your favorite kidney-friendly snack foods, specifically when you're on the go and you don't have that much time to prepare?
I eat a lot of popcorn, actually. That's like my number one snack. It's easy. I make it from scratch. Again, that's really easy to make. So yeah, I take that everywhere.
Perfect. June, do you have any suggestions from some of the patients that you have worked with?
Yeah, so popcorn is fantastic. Even like if you're looking for like that crunchy snack food type thing, I'll suggest like the unsalted tortilla chips. There's some fantastic ones on the market. The blue corn chips that aren't salted, the popcorn, like Kris said, and like even if you're traveling for dialysis, things like hard-boiled eggs are so easy. They travel so well, and they're such a great source of protein. That's a good option as well.
Yes, definitely the hard-boiled eggs. They're, like you said, they're super easy to make. They're quick to make and really great to transport. So thank you, everyone. We've had so many great questions this evening. Thank you to all of those who have submitted them. And thank you to Chef Kris for the wonderful cooking demo. It looked delicious. I really wish we were all able to try it in this moment. And thank you, June, for answering all of our nutrition related questions. If we weren't able to get to your question, please remember that you can always approach your dietitian or treatment team for advice related to your situation.